Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ajita Nathaki. I am Oshaya. I've been a spiritual teacher for 11, 12, I don't know, some number of years. Anyway, today's video is going to focus on attachments and desires and things like that. You may have heard in perhaps a meditation class, or you've heard some spiritual teacher talk about attachments, and they say, let go of attachments. Well, how do you do that? It's easier said than done. So a number of years ago, about 14 years ago, I was leaving an agency where I had been working for about 4 years. And during those 4 years, I developed a lot of professional relationships. I was one of those few individuals who would work across departments, across different units, and collaborate on new projects and just get new things out and provide support to our community. And along the way, I developed some closer relationships with some people than others, as human beings are wont to do. So on the days that I was leaving, those last 4 days or so, two individuals approached me, each in their own turn, and mind you, one of them asked in the midst of a large gathering, and another one basically was the last person that I was talking to as I was leaving. But they both asked me this, and that is, will you miss us? And I understood where the sentiment was coming from, and so I tried to make my response appropriate, but at the same time, I never lie, so I had to tell the truth, which was no. I don't miss people because I don't have attachments to them. And it's important to distinguish the not being attached to having a sound, healthy friendship and relationship with another human being. So I expressed to them that I love you as friends, and I appreciate the experience. I have learned a lot from all of you. Each in your own way have helped me grow as a professional and as an individual, and I appreciate that. And now I'm off to new adventures and work on new projects. But I thank you, and I will have fond memories of you and this group and this place. And I still do to this day. I consider them, I just have very, very positive opinions of them all. And I am grateful for that experience. And it's been 14 years. I still think of them quite often. So you might think, okay, well, is my wife okay with this notion of I have no attachments? Does that mean that I live in a passionless marriage or something like that? And that couldn't be further from the truth. Before I go and explain that, let me touch on an analogy that is, I think, quite well known. I don't know, I guess if you study spirituality and you read philosophy, you are familiar with Khalil Gibran, and in particular his most popular work, which is The Prophet. In The Prophet, he explains various concepts, and he's asked in this fictional scenario about different individuals or different experiences, and somebody asks about marriage, and Gibran, as the voice of the Prophet, or well, anyway, you know what I mean, provides an analogy of a marriage as two pillars. And the idea is that they stand apart. And in that separation, they each express themselves and support the overall structure, right? So if they were close together, the structure may collapse, right? May topple over in some direction or another. So some separation is important. So the idea is that there's independence in each of the individuals, that there is an agreement on the purpose, on why they are together, right? And so the answers that he gives, or rather the elaboration that he provides in explaining the concept of marriage as two pillars, the rest of it is pretty appropriate, but there's a concept there in the analogy that it just falls apart, in that if you have two columns and then one is gone, what happens to the structure? Collapses, right? So in a certain sense, you need the two columns there. And so there's this element of need, of obligation. What if in a marriage I have lived out my purpose and I go somewhere else, and then what happens to the structure? It just collapses. So the marriage collapses, or the family. I don't know exactly what the analogy would be in that regard, but I find that there's just something off in that explanation. So instead, I'll explain the idea of attachment like this in terms of my marriage. I am whole, complete. I am emotionally stable. I am socially sound. I have a wide circle of friends. I have a career and a job that provide me with emotional and spiritual fulfillment. I feel that my work is a service to God and to others. And I have children that love me and want to spend time with me and interact with me, or in a variety of ways. So I feel fulfilled. I feel complete. I feel whole, right? So I don't need another person to make me happy. I am happy because of the way I live, because of the relationships that I have with a variety of people, not just one. So it's all of that which makes me whole, right? And I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who needs me, who is emotionally unstable, who is emotionally needy, who craves attention or needs affirmation, or is just emotionally unstable, like depressed, or suffering from anxiety all the time, or always angry about something or another. Just that's not a healthy person that I want to spend my time with. So I want, if I'm going to be in a relationship with somebody, that person has to be whole and complete and happy in and of herself, right? So my wife and I are together not because we need each other, but because we want to be together. And that's a major distinction. We are together because we want to, not because we have to, not because there's some sort of obligation. We genuinely enjoy each other's company. And I can tell you, in the almost 13 years that we have been married, exactly how many arguments we have had. 0. All right. So, and some of you may think, well, that's a passionless marriage. There's no, there's got to be some tension. No, there doesn't have to be any tension. We are completely content. We are happy to be together. We enjoy spending time. We like cooking together, going for walks together, going shopping together. It's a genuine, I enjoy being with her and she enjoys being with me. I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of ugly, but she likes me anyway. So the point here is, attachment is not love. All right. We have been programmed through the movies, through the stories, the fairy tales that we grew up with, the sing-songy tales about this prince rescues the princess, or whatever cockamamie stories we grew up with, that there needs to be passion, this desire, this longing, and if you're not in the presence of that person, you just heartbroken, and you crave the other, and you just fall apart, and oh, wouldn't it be great to have somebody feel like that about me, blah blah blah. That is all false. It is unhealthy. We need to let go of that notion completely. Just obliterate it from your mind. It's something that, it's kind of like racism. Racism is a learned belief. It's not based on any truth. But we all have learned to accept this notion of attachment as a necessary component to a healthy relationship, and it is false. Just abandon it, let it go. Attachment is based on fear, right? Fear of being alone, fear of never again will I have this experience, and it's not necessarily related to just a person or a relationship. It could be to materialism, it could be to experiences, it could be to an idea. Not to be confused with an ideal. An ideal is something that should guide your life. Actually, you can have more than one ideal, but something that guides your life. It's the core of your value system. That is different. Okay, But an idea can be somewhat dangerous, depending on what the idea is. Okay, so I think we can all understand the notion of materialism. You have to have the latest car or the fastest car, or you need to have a yacht or whatever. Like, it's never big enough. And we all know individuals, especially in the recent news, that just are consistently going after bigger, better cars, boats, houses, you name it. And that's just an attachment. The reason that they keep getting more, bigger, faster, more expensive is because it's never enough. That joy is only temporary. Because you have the object, okay, and then now what? You're still the same you that you were before, with your same faults, with your same fears, with your same obligations, with your same perspective of the world. None of that has changed. You now got this thing, and now what? Now you're happy? Not going to happen, right? And it doesn't happen, and that's why we see these individuals just keep going for more, for more, for more. It will never be satiated. What about an experience? Here I thought of an athlete. So let's say that there's an athlete who defines herself in terms of her athleticism and perhaps some of the achievements that she has accomplished in her lifetime, in her career as an athlete, and then reaches the point of retirement. And now what? How does she define herself? What is it that guides her being? And now, mind you, I'm not saying that it's not worth it to be an athlete, because there are some great achievements. We can think of like Muhammad Ali and many others that have achieved greatness. And I think athleticism can also speak to, the power of the human spirit and the things that we're able to achieve. But when an individual defines him or herself through the lens of that label of athlete, eventually that's going to go away, right? And nobody can perform at a professional level forever until they die. Well, I guess if you live a short life, perhaps. What I'm talking about, a lengthy life with a retirement, it just at some point you're going to have to really have a grounded concept of yourself that is rooted in something whole and healthy, right? So attachment then is holding on to something out of desperation, out of this fear of again being left out, or a fear of failure, right? So holding on to something out of desperation can lead to some very poor decision making. Like, for example, you're in an unhealthy relationship. There's domestic violence, and you just feel like you're obligated to be there and to stay there, when really you need to let go of that and go your own way. And mind you, the victims of domestic violence have a lot to deal with. I'm not saying that it's a simple thing to just up and walk away. My mother was a victim of domestic violence, and I know that it's super difficult to break that cycle. She was a special case, though, in that she attempted it many times. It's just my father was a particular... Anyway, I don't want to get into too much detail, but yes, I'm aware of that it's not so easy as just up and go. It requires a lot of planning, but there is help. There are individuals out there who will provide that support. You just have to have the courage to up and do it, okay? I mean, there's more than that. It's not just. There's also, in terms of poor decisions, pressure to perform at a certain level. For example, an athlete that has to perform at this level, and if he or she does not perform at this level, then it is a failure. There are many athletes that strive to be Olympians, but not everybody can be an Olympian. And what if you have tried for that and you have failed? And I mean, you're now 40 years old and you never got there. I mean, try as hard as you might have been doing it, but you just never got there. And what happens with your life? Did you ruin your life? Did you waste it? Because you had this attachment to this notion of being an Olympian. And mind you, I'm not saying that it's impossible to set goals and to strive for them, to work for them. But the thing is, we should not define ourselves. We should not have an attachment to that notion. I still think that it's possible for an individual to work hard, to train with the goal of being an Olympian. So the idea is to make the effort to be disciplined, to be diligent about it, but not necessarily to have an attachment to the outcome. So if it's achieved, great, wonderful, but don't hold on to it must happen, and if it doesn't happen, then I will never be happy for the rest of my life. That's not healthy. Another example of poor decisions is, if you have an attachment to materialism, there is greed, which breeds mistrust, which then leads to relationships that are damaged. It could also lead to financial ruin, debt. It may even lead to crime. There are, many a story of individuals who were well off at some point or another. Things went bad, and to try to maintain some semblance of that, status, they may commit a crime, which eventually lands them in prison. And so there are just some very poor decisions that can come from these attachments. And I think a very common one, perhaps the most common, is acting out on others your frustrations because you don't have the thing that you want. You want people to behave a certain way, and they're not behaving that way, and so you're angry because they're not fitting your definition of this little perfect box of what a relationship should be, and we need to let go of that. So these attachments, if anything, are just harmful and get in the way of us evolving as spiritual beings. So as I mentioned at the start of this video, this notion of, you go to a spiritual teacher and say, oh, let go of your attachments. Isn't it wonderful? Easier said than done, okay? As I said before, an attachment is rooted in a fear. So there's no point in saying let go of the attachment. The first thing is to let go of the fear, right? And in some cases, that needs to be rationalized. Think about it. When I was a child, I wanted to be in a swimming pool, but I didn't know how to swim, and I had this fear of dunking my head in the water, right? And I believe I was around 10 years old, something like that. And a neighbor was allowing us to use her swimming pool. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to go in the shallow end. By the way, there was nobody around to teach me how to swim. I had to do all of these things myself. So I went to the shallow end and just dunked my head in and got right back up. And I go, okay, nothing happened. All right, so if I stay in the shallow end and something disorients me, I can just stand up. Okay, so then I kind of went forward horizontally in the water, and I did some kicking, some swimming, whatever, flailing of my arms, and then I got up, and I brushed the water off of my face and took a deep breath. Okay, nothing happened. Okay, that standing up thing worked. And then I would, go a little bit longer, take more strokes, be a little bit more mindful of how I was moving my arms and kicking my legs so that they were in synchrony. And eventually I taught myself how to swim, right? So I broke through my fear and eventually became a swimmer, okay? In a somewhat similar way, you need to let go of your fears. You don't need someone to make you happy. It's great to be in a relationship. I enjoy my marriage, but I don't need a person who is needy, who is just a leech on my emotions, on my energy, on my time, on my money, to make me happy, to make me complete. I don't need to be needed. It's great to be able to give, to provide, to do, but not out of a sense of obligation. It's a joy for me to do these things for my home, for my family. So there's another, and I kind of alluded to it just now, the sense of attachment to how other people live their lives. You don't live their life. You don't have their karma. You don't want their karma. Trust me on this. If you modify, if you infringe on someone else's life, you will engender karma with that individual, or at least with another individual dealing with a similar issue. So you need to let them live. Now, mind you, I'm not talking about children and going off and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Children need to have a set structure, to have a sense of discipline, not corporal punishment. I'm talking discipline, a structure. Certain behaviors are okay, certain behaviors are not okay. So that when they grow up, they have this good grounding of what it is to be a responsible adult. I'm talking about, forcing them to live your way. Like, for example, if you wanted to do ballet when you were a little girl, you're not going to you shouldn't force your little boy or little girl to do ballet. Maybe she wants to be a football player. Maybe he wants to play violin. Let them be themselves. Support their artistic endeavors if they are there, or their athletic endeavors, but don't impose on others your sense of what you wanted when you were a child, or don't impose upon others to live the way that you were raised, because you were raised in a particular time with a particular culture, with a particular family, with a particular value system that is uniquely you, and that's what makes you you, which is great. But don't expect others to have the same experiences, the same perspectives, because they will not. And if you have an attachment to that notion, then you will suffer as a consequence of that. So let go of that. Be comfortable in the space in which you are in. Be comfortable in the relationships that you have with others. Be comfortable, more importantly, with yourself. When you are happy with yourself, when you don't depend on someone else to bring joy, to bring love into your life, then you can be that source of light, that source of love, and you will naturally attract others to you, because people want joy, want life, want love in their lives. And if you are the beacon of that, then you will be wanted. So be whole, be complete, let go of your fears. Trust in God. Trust in that the plan of your life is the best thing for you. And you have the ability to break free of those chains and move forward to a happier you, a happier life. And before I close, I'm going to leave you with this, and you may think that it's a bit childish or whatever, but I actually find these words to be right on point. And I wouldn't say that I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I'm a nerd, but not a big sci-fi nerd. But I am familiar with the Star Wars series, and so I'll leave you with this. Words from Yoda. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. They happen to be correct, those words. So let go of your fears, because they are the ones causing your attachments. And when you don't get your attachments, you will suffer. That is depression, that is anger, that is all of those things that we dislike about our lives. So once you let go of your fears and use this as whatever is ailing you, because every human being is ailing in some way or another, including, I guess, to some extent me, but I would have to, well, anyway, I don't want to digress here too much. But the point is that all human beings have come into an experience where there has been some disappointment. And how we deal with that is an expression of our spiritual advancement, our spiritual wisdom. So I encourage you to let go of the fears, understand that these are misplaced, that they may come from past trauma, that they can be rationalized if you just make an effort, and you will live a happier life, full of love, full of light. And I hope this has been useful to you. Thank you for being here.